Alright, so this weekend we are doing a new project. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. Our island has 5 can lights around it, and I'm thinking rather than have 5 can lights, I may steal that one can light, that middle can light, and put in a different type light. So that's the type of light I'm looking to change it out with. I'll climb up here and I'll show you what we're dealing with. You got it rolled up. So we've got the 5 can lights. They're all on the same switch or same circuit. So anytime we turn on the lights, they all come on. We turn off the lights, they all go off. So we don't have any individual control over these. This one though is kind of centered over the island, which I'm standing on carefully. So my thought is, I'm actually going to remove this can light. The problem with this can light, it'd be awesome if it was centered over my island. It's not. It's way off on the end, almost all the way to the end. I'm going to remove this can light. There'll be a hole here in the ceiling. I'm actually going to run power from this spot over to about here, where it's kind of centered over the island, and I'll show you how we got center in a minute. I'm going to put in a box here and then have my light mounted here, and then eventually patch this up to cover that up. So that's the plan. We're going to take you through step by step of what we do, because it might be something you want to do, and it's pretty hopefully easy to do, but we've never done it, so we'll find out. Alright, so one of the first things we did is we know we want the light centered over our island. So I got my tape and I measure my island this way at 62, this way is about 26, pretty much 26. So what we did is we put a piece of paper down here, just taped it down just kind of near the middle of the island, and then I took my tape and I came across 13, half of 16, and I got a line. I came out 26, which is half of 62, and put a line. So we have a cross right here, which is pretty much dead center of the island. So now we know dead center of the island. The question is, how do we figure out what that spot is on the ceiling above? Because we want the light centered over the island. Now what you would typically do, I'm going to climb back up here, is you would get a plumb line or something similar. My granddad had a plumb line. I don't know where that thing is. I don't have it. So I went to Lowe's or Home Depot, thank you Assistant Eden, and they had a plumb line, I think. It was like 20 bucks. I'm like, I don't need a $20 plumb line for this. I rarely ever need it. How did this get tangled up in the shorts?
I had it straight and it all of a sudden just got
so, little tangle hair rush, you work on that. Let me untie my homemade plumb line. Oh my goodness.
You had one job.
I had it straight, I am telling you. It was perfectly straight and all of a sudden it's crooked.
Alright.
I'm telling you, I had it.
So I took a nut and I tied it to one end. It's not like a plumb line, it's not exact. I mean, it's not a real plumb line, and then this is like some fairly loose string. So what we did is I basically, maybe can you show them the plus on the, can they see that? I basically got some help, so I had Laura kind of steady this at the bottom, and then I took it up to the ceiling and held it with a like a straight edge so it was exact as we could get it, and I moved the string until I had the nut right over the plus that I had made on the desk. This is how you would use a plumb line if you had it. It has a much more fine point. Once we had that, I simply marked the ceiling with a dot to show me, okay, this is what's going to be center. If it's a centimeter off, no one's going to know in this situation. But I just want it as close as I can get it, and that's what we've done. So that's how we did it. This was free $99, so it didn't cost me $20 for a new plumb line. So we've got center. Now what we need to do is we need to figure out, okay, do we have a stud above this? Will you hand me the stud finder? I already know the answer.
Do not untangle that.
Okay. So I've got my stud finder, so I'm going to start just a little bit out, and I'm going to run it across this way, hoping there's a stud here. That'd be great for me. There's not. So I'm going to keep coming. So I find a stud. I'm saying stud, it's really a rafter or a joist, but I'm calling it a stud. But anyway, I come across here. I actually hit something here. Okay, so we got something here. I kind of marked it already. I've got a joist that's about this wide. It's a prefab joist. It's like an I-beam. But anyway, it's running this way. I know that because I remember when they were building the house. Anyway, my beams are running this way. So I've got one here. So I came back this way and I checked, and I've got one about here. So it turns out they're about 20, maybe 22 on center to those joists. which isn't great. So now I'm thinking, well, if my mount bracket, can you hand me that? Hand me the mount bracket. I'm thinking if my mount bracket is wide enough, I might be able to simply mount this bracket. There's no pre-drilled holes here, but I can drill some holes through this and I can mount this into the stud and it'll hold tight. Unfortunately, if I center this over my center mark through this hole, I'm just missing the joist on this side and I'm just maybe barely scraping it on this side, so I really can't do that. So this is kind of worst case scenario as far as that goes. If there was a beam here, or if I had flexibility and I could put my where the light's going to go at the beam, I could get a shallow junction or light box. It's circular, and I could go straight into that beam, and it'd be like it would be very much able to handle the weight of this like 10 or let's say 14-pound light that we're putting up. But that's not the case, so I'm going to have to put in. Can you hand me the junction box or the light box? Yeah. I'm putting in what's called an old work light box. This box doesn't go against. Usually, you put this in up against you put it up against a stud or a beam, and it hammer in and hold in and be like sound. Because there's no studs here, this is an old work box, which means I can simply cut the hole, which we're going to do. I could put this in place, and then as I tighten down these screws, these little flaps, once you start tightening them down, they pop out behind the drywall, and then as you bring it down, they clamp it in, so they hold it in place. This can hold an amount of weight. I still don't trust it on what I want to do, so I'm actually going to put some. I'm going to drill through my plate. I'm going to put some not lag bolts. I'm going to put some toggle bolts in. Probably 2 on each side to hold it in place, but that's the plan. So that being said, I'm going to have a hole here that I can work to get over to this hole, but what I know is there's at least one beam here, probably only one, but there's a beam here. So how do I get my wire from here to there because there's a beam? My hope is that I've got a drill bit that's long enough and I can get up here at the right angle and I can put a hole through this beam so that I can feed my electrical wire over to this box that's going to be here to this hole, and then I can obviously tie that into the lamp or the light that I'm going to be putting in. So that's the plan. We're going to see how it goes. So we'll get to it right now. Alright, so we've decided we're going to start on this end by removing the can light. Obviously the first thing you want to do when you start to work with electricity is make sure the breaker's off. Don't just kill it at the switch. Go to your breaker, make sure it's off. So we killed the breaker, the lights went off. We know this is not hot anymore. So I have a tester, but I'm not going to do that because I've done this kitchen before and I know the breaker that handles it. But if you have a tester, that's always a good thing to do too, is throw your tester on it. So now I've got to remove my can light. I've taken the bulb out, that's simple. We all know how to do that. Now I want to take out this inner little molding. It's held in by springs. So I'm going to try and take these springs out, and I'll show you what they look like in just a sec. There's only 2 holding this. Okay, so I've got the 2 springs out. I've got good access to the actual can area. I'm going to take a screwdriver. There should be, it looks like maybe 2 or 3 screws holding in the can housing to the sides. I'm going to try and take this out. Alright, so now, let's see. I think that's it. I've heard from videos that I've watched that these things can be kind of a bear if you just get the wrong one. So I've never done this, so I'm learning as I go, but hopefully these aren't going to be too bad. So this is now only held on by wire, which goes back to a housing electrical box, and it has a single clip. I've taken off the faceplate. I figured when they did these, they probably ran these 2 and then came to the middle and then went to those 2. So I've got a line coming into this and then a line going out for now. When I finish, I'm going to have a line coming into this, a line going out, and then also I'm going to put a box here and have a line going over here. So this is going to be like a 3-way meet-up. There we go. Alright. I think I got lucky on that one because I didn't have a lot of leverage. I basically had to squeeze. Can you see this, Trey? Mm-hmm. This was through the box and it was clamped in. I had to squeeze this really well to allow it to release. Okay, so now we're to the point. I've got the can light out. I actually have checked, and there are 2 beams between where the can light is and where I want the new light to be. So I'm going to have to drill through 2 beams. One's right by the can light, one's about maybe 6 inches past, 8 inches past that. So for the first hole, I'm going to do a bigger hole. So I had Trey grab my my hole saw kit. So I've got this, I just need my drill. Eden, can you get my drill?
There.
Thank you. So quick update. I started to drill my my circle hole through this beam. It's a tough angle, and as I was doing it, and it was a tough angle, I remembered I've got to patch this later with some drywall, and it's going to be much easier for me to do that if this is square, meaning I'm going to have to cut this into a bigger square. And I've got plenty of patched drywall, so I'm probably going to make this hole a little bigger. I'm going to probably make it like 10 by 10 or 12 by 12, which will give me more room to work, but that means I will have to take out this frame of this old can frame that's up here. So I'm going to get my 10 snips. I'm actually going to cut it first. I'm going to draw it close to square, and then I'm going to cut the drywall out, and then I should have visibility into this framing, which I can demo it out, basically just rip it out of there. And then once it's out, I should have better access to drill this first hole and even the second hole. Alright, so what I've done is I've taken my L square, and I've done a 12 by 12 box or lines around this, so I know where to cut. I'm going to use my jab saw, and I'm going to cut this. Before you do that, you want to make sure there's no wires or anything behind it, so you can reach up in this opening. This is going up to my second floor, so there's no insulation or anything that I have to deal with, but you could have wires laying around, so you just want to check above it and make sure you're not going to get anything that you don't need to get into. Let's see. Yeah, this side over here is pretty clean, so I'm going to start over here on this line. So I'm just going to take it and just give it a pop. It goes in pretty easy. I need to come out some because of that stud or that beam, but I'm going to go up here. It's going in pretty easy. And then once we're through, I can tell it's through. Now I don't want to put my hands up here because that'd be a problem. So I'm keeping my hands nice and clear, but I'm just coming across, and we're gonna have a lot of dust too. So I'm sure there's something we can do, put down towels or something for dust, but that's okay. We'll get it later. All right, so now I think I'm just going to yank this drywall down, and we'll clean it up with whatever's left.
Sorry.
Here we go. So let's see. A little bit of dust. Okay. Hand you that. All right. Okay, so we got 2/3 of it down. It may be easier on this side if I get this piece out to actually just cut this with the jab saw. All right, so I was gonna get my crowbar and sort of pry this out, but what I ended up doing, I just pushed up on it, and the little brackets gave like that. So I was able to really get this out of the way. So now that it's out of the way and up high, I'm gonna finish my cut, and then I'm gonna come back and remove this once I have the hole bigger. So that's where we're at. So Eden jab saw. Okay, and there's the stud or the beam. Okay, because I had scored it, that made that easy. If I hadn't scored this line and I pushed up, it probably would have tore the paper. But because I've scored it on this side, it made it really easy when I pushed up and got a little leverage that it popped pretty clean, which is what you want. All right, so Trey shifted the camera around so you can see what we've done. From this angle, you can see the beam here. This is those prefab beams, so it's like, I don't know, that looks like OSB already in a strand board with like maybe a 2x4 under it. So there's a board on the bottom, let's call it plywood, and then a board on the top. So it'd be like an eye if you were looking at it from the side, like an eye beam. But anyway. All right, so I've removed the housing for the can light. It wasn't too bad, just a lot of cutting and dust. These are the cleats that were in the beam. They're on both sides. I kind of bent these around and got them out. Now that it's out, you can see kind of the electrical box that's built into the can light. The wire that I took out earlier from the can light fed in through here, and then it tied into these lines. And then this was the cap. I'll show you how it fit on there. And you simply, there's a little thumb lever here, and I pull that out, and this piece just comes out. So really easy to get to the wiring, assuming you can get to wherever it is in your area. Eden, pass you that. So now I'm going to take these wires out. They just slide right out. Worst case, I got plenty of play here to get back to my box. I'm going to put on this beam. If it was tight, you probably need to be careful and not cut stuff. On this one though, I think what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to snip these wires so that I don't have to untwist them, and I'll pull them straight out, and then I'll rebind them when I got the new box up. So let me get my wire cutters or my needle nose. So I've got these, I've got plenty of play here. I think what I'm going to do is get my hole drilled, and then I'll be able to mount my box against this beam. So next step is for me to drill a hole, so that's what we'll do next. Alright, so I've used my hole saw and I've actually got the hole cut. You can see it here, and I used the biggest hole I could. It's not jeopardizing the structural integrity of the beam, but it's allowing me to have a little bit of play because I do have to go through a second beam, which is just a little further than this. Now I happen to have a long Diablo spade bit. I want to show you how far this goes before it hits. So we go to right there. So that's how much room that is. That looks like it's about 10 inches, maybe 8 inches. 8 to 10 inches is how far I've got to go before I hit this other beam, which I know is here because I have it marked on the ceiling with a couple dots. That being said, the good news is I have a long bit. Otherwise, what you might have to do is you might actually have to cut another hole somewhere and drill from the other side and then have to patch another hole. Alright, so this wood was hard to get because the angle of the blade kept riding up instead of going into the wood. Trey had the idea. I was trying to drill it like this. He said, why don't you put the drilling upside down and then push it through. And I was able to get it to feed and break through that. So the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to put my box up, I'm going to trace it, and then we're going to jab saw this out. And I've already checked, there's no studs above here from what we can tell. So it should be an easy drywall cut, and this won't be patched because the light fixture will actually go over this and the light box will go in. So that's the next step. Alright, so I'm ready to cut the hole, or at least trace the hole for my, my ceiling box. So I know my center mark is here. I use my plumb to get that. I know that this is, what was it, 4.5? It was 4.5 diameter all the way around. It's a circle. So half of that would be 2 1/4. So I simply came out from here 2 1/4 and made a mark. Same thing this way, 2 1/4 and made a mark. So because when I put this up, I can't see where exact center is, and I want to have it very close to exact center. I'm going to come in just a little bit from my circle. And that's how you cut a circle. And let's see. Because I'm not ready to put the box in yet, because I want to have it clear so I can get the wire from that beam. And I might be able to get my hand all the way to, I can feel the beam, which is great, which means I can probably find the hole, which I can. So I should be able to get the wire easily into the first small hole, and then hopefully out the second hole. So I think the next step is for us to try and get our, let's get our wire, and we'll try and fish that or feed that through. So that's what we're going to do next. So I've got my junction box. So what I'll end up doing is I'm going to put 2 in 1. Since these two are together, I'll probably put those 2 in 1. And then this one running out to this will probably come out that side. Alright, so I took my box and I put it up here, and then I took a pencil and I marked against the wood. I marked against the wood where the holes would be for those flanges. So now that I've got some marks, I'm going to drill a pile of holes, which is going to make it really easy to put those screws in. Alright, so I got my box cutter. I'm just going to cut the wire sheathing off. Okay. You can see my box, I've got the 2 white coming in this way, I've got the yellow coming in this way, that's my new line going that way. And then you can see I've just coupled the 3 ground wires into one of these caps. I'm going to take the wires and come in from the back side. I'm going to push this through. So now is when we're actually going to put this in. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to drill a couple holes through this. I'll probably take it down to my workroom and drill a couple holes through this. And then once that's done, we'll put in we'll figure out where the holes are, we'll put in toggle bolts, and we'll suck this up to the ceiling. So that'll be the next step. They didn't have this pre-drilled, which would have been nice. I wanted to put some holes through this plate and go into, in this case, what's going to be toggle bolts that hold it into the ceiling as opposed to relying on this box or maybe into a stud. It'll just keep this to be more stable. So what I did is I went down and I marked a couple of areas I wanted to put these toggle bolts. I'm doing 2 on each side for stability. So I took I have a tap. So I took a tap and I popped it really good, and it made a little, like a indentation in there, or a little dimple. And once I did that dimple, I was able to put my drill bit in there, and it wouldn't slide around the metal, and it actually would cut through. And I got through 3 of the 4 before my drill bit broke, so that's pretty good. It broke on the last one, of course, and that's okay. I've got a million of those bits. But anyway, so I've drilled through, so now I have 4 holes. So this part's a little tricky. We did as much as we could, measuring from the wall to here, and then using the plumb line again to try and see if we're centered as far as this goes, because once this is up here, we have to figure out which way is actually centered over the island. So we spent some time getting it where we think it needs to be. It'd be better if Laura was here, but we did it, and we're not as good as her about doing that. We marked center here on our box by measuring across. I don't know, it was like 5 and something. We measured and got half, so we marked that with a Sharpie. And then we have marks on our wall where we knew it needed to be. So once we had those, I put this up and I held it very carefully in place where we had it eyeballed and we had it on our marks. And then I took a pencil and I put the pilot hole marks up on the ceiling. So that's this hole, this hole, this spot, and this spot. So now I'm going to drill the toggle bolt is more than an anchor. Anchors are pretty good for some things. The toggle bolts, the way they work is they're spring loaded. So these little flaps they push down, and then they're spring loaded, so they pop out. Nice little spring in there. So the way it works is you drill a hole big enough, just barely big enough for this toggle bolt head to go through like this. It goes through like this. You pinch it. Once it goes up and it clears the drywall, it springs out. And then as you roll the screw up, and these things are fun to spin, the head comes down, whatever this toggle, let's call it, comes down, and it clamps up against the drywall, and it has a nice heavy hold to keep things secure that need to go into something that maybe needs more than a standard anchor. Never hang like a boxing heavy bag with these, but for this light, it's like 12, 14 pounds, plenty. Alright, and I know that when I was doing it, obviously I need to know which side goes which way because the holes aren't exact. So I made sure the ground was towards that way. So that's how I know which end goes where. So now let's see if I can figure this out. So we'll see if we can push these up. I am going to give myself more room to work with by going a little higher up, not too far up. Let's see. It's going to go up and in. So at this point, I'm going to strip out the wiring so that I've got my wires that I can go into my light fixture, and then the light fixture is going to pop on here, and then these screws are what holds it on, which is pretty cool. So that's where we're at now. So now we've got that cap on, and we're going to take the plastic off. These cords are adjustable between, like, I don't know, 20 inches, let's say, and like 40 inches or something. So there's a bunch of play in these. For now, I'm just going to take the plastic off one of them, and we're going to get a light bulb. We grab any light bulb, and we're going to get special light bulbs for these, but for now we're just using
Light bulb.
We're just using this floodlight, can light, and hang on, Trey. All right, now Trey's going to go down to the basement. He's going to turn on the breaker. Yes. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got all lights. So pull it back up. We're actually going to have to take them up to about, me and Trey were looking at, we'll have to let Laura give us the final word, but probably at least this high. We want it where if you're standing on one person on each side of the island, they can see each other without looking, and talk to each other without looking through the lights. So I'm going to have to take these, we'll take this panel off, which is how it's made to do. You'll pull it down, you feed this wire up into the upper casing, and it houses it up there, and then this just locks in at a certain height. So once we figure that out how we like it, we'll do that. You could do, the picture showed you could do like, you know, a slant where this one's really short and then they gradually get longer or vice versa. One picture had like the first, third, and fifth one long, and then maybe the second and fourth one a little shorter. I think we're just going to do them all consistent across. That's probably what we'll do. But you have options. But then once we get the lights done, we got to order the bulbs for the type we need. Once we get the lights done and we're happy with that, the only thing left is to patch this. Alright, so behind me you can see I've got the lights up. You can also see the hole is still up in the ceiling. I haven't taken care of that yet. So now that the lights are up and working, I've still got to get, I've got them all to the right height I want, and I've got the bulbs on order. They'll be here in a couple days. But I need to get the hole patched. So that's what we're working on today. So step one is I'm going to go up to the hole. I know it's 12 by 12 roughly. I'm going to measure it and try and get exact measurements. And then I'm going to come down and draw that pattern on a piece of sheetrock. Patch sheetrock, and then I'm going to work on sticking that up into that opening using drywall screws. Alright, so I have taken my measurements for this hole and taken a piece of patch drywall outside. Home Depot sold it like a 2x2 section, which was perfect. I didn't want to get a whole 4x8 foot piece of drywall to correct this. So we took the small piece out, cut it to our specs, which is roughly 12 by 12. I put the piece up here and it fits pretty well. I may have to adjust it slightly, but I feel good about it. So now what I'm going to do, on this side, I have the rafter, so the drywall can adhere to that. I can screw into that. On this side, there's nothing, so I'm taking an old piece of scrap board, which is kind of called a furrow strip. I'm going to put it up and in like this, and then I'm going to put drywall screws in to kind of hold this in place. And then when I put my piece of patch drywall in, it'll adhere up to that, and it'll give it some backing so that it doesn't just float up into the open area here. So that's what we're doing, and yeah, so now I'm going to start drilling some pilot holes. Alright, so now that we've got our furrow strip in place, I've placed my patch piece up here. I did do some micro adjustments with a X-Acto type knife, just trimming off a few of the corners that were maybe a little overlapped. But for the most part, it fit very well because I did a 12 by 12 pretty much exact. So now that this is up here, I'm going to drill some pilot holes, and then I'm going to put some of these drywall screws or multi-purpose screws into the to the beam here, and then into the furrow strip here. So that's what we're doing. Alright, so now I've got my patch piece in place, stuck in with some drywall screws. So I've got a 6-inch putty knife. I'm going to try and get some joint compound on my knife. I've never done this, we're going to see how it goes. And I'm going to smear it up here, get in these cracks, and then try and get it nice and evened out. And then once we have that done, we'll let it dry, we'll see how it is. But that's what we're doing now. So. Okay, so we've wrapped up our project. We've got the lights finally installed. They're finished. Bulbs are in and the globes are all in, and it turned out well. We also finished wrapping up the patch job in the ceiling for where the old can light was. I did end up buying a 14-inch blade, which made that a lot easier than using my 6-inch knife. So the 14-inch blade helped. Got that patch. Just put a coat of paint on it about 30 minutes ago, and it's drying, but it patched up pretty well. So I'll show you that in a sec. But yeah, so the project turned out pretty nice.